The eviction notice felt like ice water in my veins. 3 years. 3 years I'd paid Henry Morrison my rent on time, sometimes early, sometimes scraping together my last dollars to make sure his precious investment stayed profitable. And now this. The paper trembled in my hands as I read it again. 30 days. 30 days to find somewhere else to live because Henry had decided my one-bedroom apartment could fetch more money with someone else inside it. I sat on the edge of my worn couch, staring at the words until they blurred together. The apartment wasn't much. Thin walls, outdated fixtures, a kitchen so small you could barely turn around in it. But it was home. It was the place I'd rebuilt myself after everything fell apart. The knock on my door came sharp and impatient. I already knew who it would be. Henry Morrison stood in my hallway like he owned the world, which, in a lot of ways, he did, at least this small piece of it. Medium height, expensive suit that probably cost more than I made in 2 months, and that smile, that cold, calculated smile he wore whenever he was about to crush someone under his heel. "Just wanted to make sure you got my notice," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "I got it." "Good. 30 days. Not 31, not 30 days and a few hours. 30 days exactly, or I'll have the sheriff remove you myself." My hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Henry, I've been a good tenant. Never missed a payment, never caused problems. Why are you doing this?" His laugh was sharp and ugly. "Because I can. Because this market is hot, and I can get double what you're paying from someone who actually has money. You're small time, always have been. Time to make room for people who matter." The words hit like physical blows. 3 years of scraping by, 3 years of making this man richer while I lived paycheck to paycheck, and this was how he saw me. Small time. Someone who didn't matter. "I could pay more," I said, hating how desperate I sounded. "With what money?" Henry's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "Face it, you're barely keeping your head above water as it is. Do yourself a favor and find someplace more suited to your situation. Maybe a nice cardboard box under the freeway." He turned to leave, then paused, looking back over his shoulder. "Oh, and don't bother with any legal challenges. My lawyers eat people like you for breakfast. 30 days. The door slammed shut behind him, and I stood there in the sudden silence, rage and humiliation burning in my chest like acid. Small time. Someone who didn't matter. If only he knew. That night, I sat at my laptop, staring at numbers that would have made Henry's eyes pop out of his skull, account balances that most people only dreamed about. Investment portfolios that had been quietly growing for years while I lived like a monk in this tiny apartment. My grandmother's inheritance hadn't been just the modest sum everyone thought. It had been substantial, life-changing, substantial. But I'd made a decision early on to live simply, to invest wisely, to build something real instead of flashing wealth around like some kind of peacock. I'd watched too many people destroy themselves with sudden money, watched them burn through fortunes on cars and clothes and houses they couldn't really afford. I'd chosen a different path. A patient path. But patience had its limits. I pulled up Henry's property records, information that was public but tucked away where most people wouldn't think to look. The man owned 17 properties in the city. Rental buildings, commercial spaces, even a few vacant lots he was sitting on, waiting for the right development opportunity. His crown jewel was the mansion in Riverside Hills. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, swimming pool, 3-car garage, sitting on 2 acres of perfectly manicured land. The kind of place that appeared in lifestyle magazines. The kind of place Henry Morrison used to remind the world exactly how successful he was. I'd driven past it once, years ago, just curious about where my landlord lived while he collected rent from dozens of tenants living in buildings he probably wouldn't set foot in himself. The house was impressive, no doubt about it, the kind of impressive that cost serious money to maintain. I started digging deeper into Henry's finances, following paper trails that most people couldn't access but money could open doors to. What I found made me smile for the first time since receiving that eviction notice. Henry Morrison was leveraged to his eyeballs. The mansion alone carried a mortgage that would choke most people. Add in the commercial real estate loans, the lines of credit secured against his rental properties, and the personal loans he'd taken out to fund his lifestyle, and the picture became clear. Henry Morrison was rich on paper but cash poor in reality. He was walking a tightrope, and all it would take was one strong wind to send him tumbling. I could be that wind. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of careful planning. I found a temporary rental across town, a furnished place I could month to month while I waited for the right moment. Henry probably assumed I'd moved into some fleabag motel or found a friend's couch to crash on. He'd made it clear what he thought of my financial situation. Let him think that. Meanwhile, I was having very different conversations with very different people. Private investigators who specialized in financial intelligence. Real estate lawyers who understood the complexities of distressed property sales. Investment firms that could move large sums of money quickly and quietly. Henry's weakness wasn't just his debt load, it was his pride. He'd built his reputation on being the successful real estate mogul, the man who could turn any property into profit. That reputation was everything to him, and it was also what would destroy him. Because Henry Morrison had been lying about his finances for years. The documents my investigators uncovered painted a picture of systematic fraud, inflated property values on loan applications, phantom rental income reported to lenders. Shell companies created to hide debt and make his portfolio look stronger than it actually was. It was a house of cards, and Henry had been living in terror of someone noticing how precarious it all was. He'd been scrambling for months, moving money between accounts, selling smaller properties to keep up with payments on the larger ones. The reason he'd evicted me wasn't just greed. It was desperation. The net was already closing around him when my 30 days were up. I moved out quietly, taking only what I needed and leaving the apartment clean. Henry never bothered to check on the move-out himself, sending one of his property managers instead, a tired-looking woman who apologized for having to be there. "I know this is hard," she said, as she walked through the empty rooms. "Henry's been evicting a lot of long-term tenants lately. I think he's in some kind of financial trouble." I nodded sympathetically, playing the part of the displaced tenant who couldn't afford anything better. "Do you know if he's planning to sell any of his properties?" She glanced around nervously, as if Henry might be listening. "Between you and me, I think he might have to. The banks have been calling the office a lot lately. And he's been really on edge, snapping at everyone." Perfect. 2 days later, the foreclosure notice appeared in the legal section of the city newspaper. Henry Morrison's mansion in Riverside Hills, due to default on mortgage payments, would be sold at public auction in 14 days. I imagined Henry's face when he opened his paper that morning. The sick feeling in his stomach as he realized his carefully constructed image was crumbling in public. The panic as he scrambled to call lawyers and lenders, trying to find a way to stop the inevitable. But some things couldn't be stopped once they were set in motion, and I had been very thorough in setting them in motion. The auction was held on the courthouse steps on a gray Tuesday morning. A small crowd gathered, mostly real estate investors and curiosity seekers drawn by the drama of seeing a local mogul's empire collapse. Henry wasn't there. I'd heard through my network that he was in meetings with bankruptcy lawyers, trying to salvage what he could from the wreckage. I stood at the back of the crowd, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, looking like any other casual observer. The auctioneer ran through the legal requirements, describing the property and the terms of sale. The bidding started low, as it always did. "Do I have 500,000? A few hands went up, real estate flippers, probably, or investors who saw opportunity in Henry's misfortune. 600,000. 700,000. 800,000. The bidding slowed as we approached what most people probably thought the property was worth in its current market. The mortgage balance was over $2 million, but foreclosure auctions rarely recovered full value. Most buyers would get a steal. Most buyers weren't me. $1 million, I called out, my voice carrying clearly across the courthouse steps. Heads turned. The other bidders looked around, trying to figure out who had that kind of cash to throw around at a foreclosure auction. 1.2 million, someone else called. 2 million, I responded immediately. The crowd fell silent. 2 million was serious money, the kind of bid that ended conversations and ended auctions. The other bidders dropped out one by one, recognizing they were outclassed. Going once, going twice, sold to bidder number 47 for $2 million. I walked forward to complete the paperwork, pulling out a cashier's check I'd arranged days in advance. The clerk looked at the amount and then at me, clearly wondering who I was and where I'd gotten that kind of money. I was nobody. I was small time. I was someone who didn't matter. At least, that's what Henry Morrison thought. The call came that afternoon while I was sitting in my temporary apartment, reviewing the property deed that now carried my name instead of Henry's. I'd been expecting it, but hearing his voice still sent a cold thrill through me. "This is Henry Morrison. I understand you purchased my house at auction today." His voice was controlled, but I could hear the strain underneath, the barely contained panic of a man watching his world collapse around him. "I did. I'd like to discuss buying it back from you. I'm prepared to make a very generous offer." I let the silence stretch out, savoring the moment. Henry Morrison, the man who'd humiliated me just 4 weeks ago, was now begging me for mercy. "I'm not interested in selling." "You don't understand." His voice cracked slightly. "That house has been in my family for 15 years. It's not just an investment property like my apartment was to me." Another silence, longer this time. I could practically hear the wheels turning in his head, trying to place my voice, trying to figure out who he was talking to. "Do I know you? You evicted me 30 days ago, told me I was small time, told me to find a cardboard box under the freeway." The sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. When Henry spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "That's impossible. You're just some broke tenant. You couldn't possibly have $2 million. "You're right about one thing," I said, my own voice growing colder. "I couldn't possibly have just $2 million. The amount I paid for your house is pocket change for me, Henry. I've been living below my means for years, building something real while people like you flash their wealth around like peacocks. But the apartment, the way you lived, the way I chose to live, there's a difference between being poor and choosing simplicity, a difference between needing money and wanting to understand what money really means." Henry's breathing was harsh over the phone line. "What do you want? Money? I can pay you double what you spent. Triple." "With what money, Henry? Your assets are frozen, your credit lines are maxed out, and your reputation is in ruins. You have nothing left to offer me. Please." The word came out broken, desperate. "That house is everything to me. My wife doesn't know about the financial problems yet. My kids think their father is successful. If I lose the house, I lose everything." For just a moment, I felt something that might have been sympathy. Henry Morrison was a human being, and watching any human being fall apart was difficult. But then I remembered his smile when he delivered that eviction notice, the casual cruelty in his voice when he'd called me small time. "You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy someone else's life for profit." "I'll do anything," Henry whispered. "Anything you want. There is one thing." Hope crept into his voice. "Name it." "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything. To have someone with power look at you and decide you don't matter. To be told you're small time and worthless and that the world would be better off without you in it. I understand now. I get it. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." "Sorry isn't enough, Henry. Sorry doesn't give me back the 3 years I spent making you richer while you looked down on me. Sorry doesn't erase the humiliation of being thrown out like garbage." "Then what will?" I had been planning this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, I felt strangely empty. Revenge, it turned out, wasn't as satisfying as I'd hoped it would be. It just felt cold and hollow. "Nothing will, Henry. That's the point. Some things can't be fixed with money or apologies or grand gestures. Some damage is permanent." "So you're just going to destroy my life? Take everything I've worked for?" "I'm not taking anything. I bought your house legally at a public auction because you couldn't pay your debts. Everything else that's happening to you is the consequence of your own choices. The lies you told to banks, the fraud you committed to keep your empire afloat, the way you treated people you thought were beneath you." Henry was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, resigned maybe, or just completely broken. "The house means everything to my family. And my apartment meant everything to me. Funny how that works." I hung up the phone and sat in the silence of my temporary rental, looking out the window at the city lights. In a few days, I would move into Henry Morrison's mansion. I would swim in his pool and park my car in his garage and sleep in his master bedroom. But I wouldn't feel victorious. Because I was starting to understand something I should have realized years ago. Money might be power, but power without purpose was just another kind of prison. I had destroyed Henry Morrison not because it would make me happy, but because I could. Because having the ability to hurt someone who had hurt me felt like justice. But justice and revenge weren't the same thing, no matter how much I wanted them to be. The moving truck arrived on Thursday morning. I had bought furniture to fill the mansion, expensive pieces that Henry would have recognized as symbols of real wealth. The kind of understated luxury that only people with serious money could afford. As I directed the movers, a car pulled into the driveway. A silver BMW, a few years old but well maintained. A woman got out, followed by two teenagers, a boy and a girl, Henry's family. The woman was pretty in a tired way, with dark hair pulled back and worry lines around her eyes. She looked like someone who had been carrying a heavy burden for a long time, without letting anyone see the weight of it. The kids looked confused and embarrassed, the way teenagers do when their world stops making sense. "Excuse me," the woman said, approaching cautiously. "I'm Claire Morrison. This is my house." "Was your house," I corrected gently. "I'm the new owner." Her face crumbled slightly before she caught herself, straightening her shoulders with the kind of dignity that comes from years of holding families together. "I know about the auction. I know about Henry's problems. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to get some of our personal things before." She gestured vaguely at the moving truck, unable to finish the sentence. "Of course, take whatever you need." Claire studied my face, trying to read something in my expression. "Henry says you used to rent from him, that this is some kind of revenge." I watched the movers carry a leather couch through the front door, the same couch Henry had probably sat on while planning my eviction. "Your husband destroyed my life because he could. Because he thought I didn't matter enough to deserve basic human decency. And now you're destroying his life because you can." The words hit harder than I expected. Coming from her, they sounded different than they had in my head, less like justice and more like cruelty. "I'm not destroying anything, I'm just not saving him from the consequences of his own actions." "Is there a difference?" I looked at Henry's children, standing awkwardly by the car, watching strangers carry furniture into their childhood home. The boy was trying to look tough, but I could see the fear in his eyes. The girl was crying quietly, trying to hide it from her mother. "I don't know," I said finally. "I thought there was, but now I'm not sure." Claire nodded as if she understood something I was still struggling with. For what it's worth, I know Henry was wrong. The way he treated his tenants, the way he talked about people who didn't have money. I tried to tell him it would catch up with him someday. "But you stayed with him." "I stayed with my family. There's a difference." She was right, and we both knew it. Henry Morrison's sins weren't his wife's sins, and they certainly weren't his children's. But the consequences of those sins were falling on all of them just the same. "Take your time," I said. "Get everything you need." Claire's smile was sad and grateful. "Thank you. And for whatever it's worth to hear, I'm sorry about what Henry did to you. You didn't deserve that." I watched them go into the house, a family saying goodbye to the only home the children had ever known. The boy went straight upstairs, probably to his room. The girl lingered in the living room, touching furniture and looking at family pictures with the kind of desperate intensity that comes from trying to memorize something before it disappears forever. Claire moved through the house efficiently, packing photo albums and personal documents, a lifetime of memories condensed into cardboard boxes. She didn't take any of the expensive furniture or artwork. Just the things that mattered, the things money couldn't replace. When they were done, I walked them to their car. The BMW was packed full of boxes and suitcases, everything they owned that really mattered crammed into a space meant for groceries and sports equipment. "Where will you go?" I asked. "My sister has a place across town. We can stay there until we figure something out." Claire paused with her hand on the car door. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What happens now? Do you move on? Or does this become who you are forever?" The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on getting to this moment that I hadn't thought much about what came after. What do you do when your revenge is complete, but the emptiness inside you is still there? "I don't know," I said honestly. "Henry made a mistake," Claire said quietly. "A terrible, cruel mistake that hurt you badly. But if you let that mistake turn you into someone who hurts other people, then he wins. Even from the bottom of whatever hole he's dug for himself, he wins." She got into the car and drove away, leaving me standing in the driveway of my new mansion, surrounded by expensive furniture and empty rooms. That night, I sat by the pool in Henry's backyard, looking up at the stars and thinking about Claire's words. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the lights from the house like scattered diamonds. Everything I had wanted was mine now: the house, the pool, the satisfaction of watching Henry Morrison lose everything he cared about. So why did I feel so empty? My phone rang, cutting through the silence. Henry's number appeared on the screen. "What do you want, Henry?" "I wanted to tell you that you were right." His voice was different now, quieter, less desperate. "About consequences and choices and all of it. I've been thinking about the way I treated you, and it was inexcusable. Not just wrong, but cruel. Is this supposed to make me feel sorry for you?" "No. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what it feels like to lose everything, to have someone look at you and decide you don't matter, and I wanted to tell you that I deserved it." The line went quiet for a moment. "But my family didn't deserve it. My kids didn't do anything wrong, and they're the ones who are really paying the price for my mistakes." "What do you want me to do about that, Henry?" "I don't want you to do anything. I just wanted to say that if I could go back and handle things differently with you, I would. Not because of what happened to me, but because what I did was wrong. Period." I stared at the water, watching ripples spread from where a leaf had fallen in. "Where are you now?" "Staying at a friend's place. Filed for bankruptcy yesterday. The lawyers say I might avoid jail time if I cooperate fully with the investigation into the financial irregularities." "Financial irregularities? Is that what we're calling fraud now?" Henry laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, well, lawyers have a way of making everything sound better than it is." "And your family?" "Claire's sister is letting them stay there. The kids enrolled in new schools this week. Different district, not as nice, but they'll be okay. Claire's strong, stronger than me. She seemed like a good person." "She is. So are my kids. They didn't ask to have a father who cared more about money and image than about treating people decently." I found myself thinking about the girl, crying quietly while strangers moved through her house. About the boy, trying to be tough while his world fell apart. About Claire, packing memories into boxes with quiet dignity. "Henry." "Yeah?" "I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honestly." "Okay. If our situations were reversed, if you had my money and I was in your position, would you help me?" The silence stretched out so long I thought he might have hung up. When Henry finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "A month ago? No. I wouldn't have helped you. I would have told myself you deserved whatever happened to you because that's the kind of person I was. And now? Now I know that the person I was is exactly how I ended up here, and I know that the person you choose to be from this point forward is going to determine who you really are." After I hung up, I sat by the pool until dawn, watching the sun come up over the city. I thought about revenge and justice, and the difference between having power and knowing how to use it. I thought about Henry's family sleeping on borrowed beds in someone else's house. I thought about the apartment I'd lost and the humiliation I'd felt, and whether any of it mattered anymore. By the time the sun was fully up, I had made my decision. The law offices of Chen, Rodriguez, Associates occupied the top floor of a downtown building, the kind of place where serious money came to solve serious problems. I had been there before, during the planning stages of Henry's downfall. Now, I was back with a different kind of problem to solve. "This is quite unusual, Mr. Sevens," Chen said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. "You want to sell the property back to Mr. Morrison for the exact amount of the outstanding mortgage debt." "That's correct." "Which means you'll be taking a significant loss on your investment." "I'm aware of that." "And you want to structure it as a private sale, not going through traditional real estate channels." "I want it done quickly and quietly." Mr. Chen set down the papers and studied my face. He was good at reading people, which was probably why he was successful at his job. "May I ask why you're doing this?" "Let's just say I've learned something about the difference between justice and revenge." The paperwork took 3 days to complete. During that time, I had other conversations, made other arrangements. Some problems required money to solve, others required connections and influence. I had both, and I was finally ready to use them properly. The call to Henry came on Friday afternoon. "I have a proposition for you," I said without preamble. "I'm listening." I'm going to sell your house back to you for the amount of the outstanding mortgage debt. No profit for me, no penalty for you. You'll own it free and clear." The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the connection had dropped. "That's impossible," Henry said finally. "I don't have that kind of money. I'm bankrupt, remember? The money is being provided by an investor who's interested in giving you a second chance. The loan terms are generous, very generous." "What investor? Who would possibly want to?" He stopped mid-sentence. "It's you. You're the investor. The terms are simple. You pay back the loan over 15 years at 2% interest, which is basically free money. In exchange, you agree to sell off your other properties and get out of the rental business permanently." "I don't understand. Why would you do this?" "Because your wife and kids don't deserve to pay for your mistakes. And because I've learned that destroying someone doesn't make you feel as good as you think it will. There has to be a catch, some kind of trick, or—" "No trick, Henry. Just an opportunity for both of us to be better people than we were a month ago." Henry was quiet again, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me. Prove that you've learned something from this. Treat people with respect. Remember what it feels like to lose everything, and make sure you never make another person feel that way." "I will. I swear to you, I will." "And Henry?" "Yeah?" "If you ever treat anyone the way you treated me, if I hear about you taking advantage of people who don't have the power to fight back, I'll destroy you again. And next time, I won't change my mind." The paperwork was signed the following week. Henry and his family moved back into their house, and I found a different place to live. Something smaller, more modest. More in line with who I actually was instead of who I thought I wanted to be. I kept the rental property management company I'd bought during my investigation into Henry's finances, but I ran it differently. Fair rents, respectful treatment of tenants, maintenance issues handled promptly. It turned a smaller profit than Henry's operation had, but it was sustainable and honest. Henry kept his word. He sold off his other properties, paid down his debts, and took a job managing commercial real estate for someone else. Last I heard, Claire had gone back to school and the kids were doing well in their classes. Sometimes I drive past the old apartment building where this all started. There's a new landlord now, and from what I can tell, the tenants are treated fairly. The building looks better too, like someone actually cares about maintaining it properly. I think about that eviction notice sometimes, and the rage I felt when Henry looked at me like I was nothing. I think about the satisfaction of watching his world crumble and the hollow feeling that came after. I think about Claire's question, what happens now? The answer, I learned, is that you decide who you want to be, not based on what other people do to you, but based on what kind of person you choose to be when you have the power to make that choice. Henry Morrison taught me that money is power, but what he never understood, and what I had to learn the hard way, is that real power isn't the ability to destroy someone who wronged you. Real power is knowing when not to use it.